So now to touch upon the other part of it, because sustainable competitive advantage is a very huge thing, strategies is a very huge thing. Now, if there is something else I would love to ask you, what do you think so that is the sustainable competitive advantage of the United States? That they could create wealth in the last 100 years? What was the sustainable competitive advantage of Germany? That they could build wealth in the last so many years? And what is the sustainable competitive advantage of China? That they could create wealth in the last 30, 40 years? And one more country that I would love to touch upon before I go to India is South Korea. Because South Korea is one of the countries which I really want to touch upon, because this country has created so many industries such as Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Kia, and not just that, the South Korean movies and the cinema industry has actually pushed down blending both the West and the East together. Now, could you please touch upon the areas of the industrial ecosystem of sustainable competitive advantage of these countries that I mentioned, to begin with the United States?
Yeah, look at the United States. Basically, if you look at US, just look at the amount of imports that US makes from China. US is the number one importer of Chinese products. It's a consumer product. It's a consuming country. It's not a manufacturing country as such. And it follows a different political system. It follows a system of capitalism. And in a capitalist model, you don't do anything. You buy, sell, you make your money. That's all. And US, Germany after World War II, yeah, again. But the advantage that Germany has was it got completely zeroed out during the World War II, and from the ashes. If you allow me to use the word ashes, it came up to a level. Because they've started building up, and Germany was then known as the production company, technology company. US was known as the consuming country, whereas Germany was known as the production country and was known as the technology country. China believed in a socialistic pattern long back, a communist socialist pattern long back. Then somewhere in the last 30, 40 years, they moved over from socialism and started producing in large quantities. And they virtually used, if you allow me to use the word, dictatorial government, where they did not allow anybody to think. They said, I'm telling you do this, I'm telling you do this. They created economic zones where manufacturing took place. They sent their students out, the young people out to different colleges in the US and Germany, to understand what's happening out there. And these guys were asked to come back and implement the same thing out here. And they were given incentives for all of this. So because of that, and then they realized that if you want to dominate the country, that if you want to dominate the world, if you want to become a dominating country, then you must increase your GDP. And how can you increase the GDP? Because GDP has got three parts. One is manufacturing, one is agriculture, one is service industry. And today you see they are not so good in software industries and things like that, but they're very good in manufacturing. And this is the cause, this is the reason why China is growing so rapidly. You talked about South Korea, for example. South Korea started aping China to a large extent. And what were Chinese basic principles in initial stage? They said quality, okay, limited quality assurance to you, but use economies of scale to bring down the cost of production and sell it to you at a lower price. And in the earlier days, they started copying. They started copying things. Of course, now they have stopped copying. They are innovating. That's how they've gone into weaponry, which is still one of the best. They've gone into fighter planes and all that, which is really a good plane. They are manufacturing the aircraft, commercial aircrafts also. In the last 10 years, they've moved in this direction. They are also talking in terms of nuclear power plants. Look at the hydroelectric dams that they have built, huge ones. On the river Brahmaputra, which has a different name in China, right? They built some 8, 10, 12 huge dams, and these dams produce huge electricity because electricity is the key to
Industrial
activities. Come down to India. I mean, it's nice to say we were suppressed for the last so many decades and higher centuries and all that. But then the poverty level, which was so low when we got the independence, to a certain extent we tried to be, independent. We went to the West, we didn't get help.
That was the same for China as well, because they also had huge poverty before the
Yes, I'm coming. Hold on. Yeah. They also had a huge poverty. We also had huge poverty. And then we went to the West. The West didn't give us the help that was required. Then we moved over to Russia. Russia helped us build all these public sector units like the BHEL and all these things, right? But that was not the end of the story. Because of the huge level of poverty, because of the huge level of uneducated people that were there, corruption started increasing. And with the result of corruption increasing, and when corruption starts increasing, no country can develop itself. Development stopped. Though you will come back and say, no, we've had a good GDP growth, etc. But real development which we could have stopped for a long period of time. And the second important thing is, because the development stopped and the inflation started increasing and there was we could not really control that inflation to a large extent. And in 1990, when the things became very worse, because what has happened was we had only about half a day's foreign exchange for importing products. And that was the time when the Narasimha Rao, it's known as Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh, Ahluwalia, the trio who joined together, and they the trio basically who masterminded all of this. And that was the brain behind all of this. And they said we need to reform. They went to World Bank, they went to Bank of England, took money as loan and mortgaged the gold and all that. And from there, the real progress started going. Then somewhere in between, the progress stopped again because of wrong policies. Then again, the whip started off, And the biggest challenge which we are facing today is because of the people who are below the poverty line. When I say almost 2/3 of people who are below the poverty line. So you got a resource which is there with you, and that resource has to go not only to sustain the people below the poverty line, that resource has to go to sustain the industrial needs, that resource has to go to sustain the agricultural. And in 2000, India suddenly saw there was a big boom in service industry through the software market. And with the result, a large number of people who are doing small jobs in software, suddenly they could go to the US, UK and other countries, and they started working out there, and we started getting huge amounts of foreign exchange. Today, we are among the top software sellers. I use the word sellers, who supply software to the world, right? And this is the key. I mean, you either you follow a semi-dictatorial method like what China is following, or you follow a completely capitalistic market. And when you have a mix of socialistic market, socialistic economy and a capitalist economy, because we are trying to balance today, India is trying to balance today the socialistic needs on one hand and the capitalistic needs on the other hand. And then you cannot grow at the same rate as what is happening.
Now, when you said this, that India and Indian industries have been sellers, that was from 2000 to 2010, approximately a few more years. But then my question is, you are talking about competitive advantage. You're talking about sustaining the competitive advantage. Why is India and the Indian industries, software industries, which were sellers, not able to lead in the field of innovations, especially with the industrial era becoming a internet digital era, which has already emerged, especially with the emergence of artificial intelligence, mechatronics? Why is it that they could not take the advantage as a leader, as an innovator, or at least as an early adapter who's coming inside. Where did India lose this race or is losing the race?
See, India is losing the race. It has not lost the race yet. It's losing the race because, again, if you look at the software industry itself, there are two types. One is the lower level of software, which does basically programming and all that. And the other is the higher level of software, which uses blockchain, AI, and all of these things. Right. Now, we focused when 2000 came in. It was known as the Y2K period, and there was a large number of people who were required to do the lower level reprogramming of whatever programs they already had. We continued it for a long period, and we did not see the coming of the AI, coming of all of this into the market. And today, when we see that, we suddenly find we don't have people to come up to that level. It's a chicken or egg story. You're saying that, but I don't have people to move in that direction. And therefore, many of these companies today, like TCS, Infosys, and all these companies, they are giving enough incentive saying, please come, learn in blockchain, learn AI, learn analytics, for example, and then only you can survive.
That was awesome because you actually explained down on how India didn't foresee, but how the US foresaw and how China foresaw, especially in a lot of people who are from the AI backgrounds, they know about the Deep Blue, which the United States experimented with IBM, and how China experimented with AlphaGo, with Alphabet and Go, and how they foresaw that 2020 is the beginning of the artificial intelligence era.
Right.
And at some point of time, the European Union and other countries, bigger countries like India or Russia, left down this particular race which has been there. If there is one last question that I would love to touch upon is, you mentioned about value innovation, and we touched upon almost all the bigger countries and the industrial ecosystem. Now, Japan is one of the countries. They built at the same pace that Germany also built after the World War. They both had the same. They were totally finished after the Second World War. They built industries, disrupted the whole industries. Now, where do you feel that Japan has lost the race? That became an advantage for China, especially in value innovation and competitive advantage.
See, Japan has not really lost a race. It's still the best.
Robotics.
Yeah. Whether you talk of robotics, whether you talk of trains, Japan has focused itself on certain areas. It has not focused itself on pharmaceutical. Yeah. If you look at it, the Toyota cars, innovation from Japan is still the best. So in certain areas like the metro railways or the automobile industry, they are good.
But the electric vehicles, they are losing the race because there is no Japanese
Again, they have not foreseen all of this. See, one of the main things as a strategic planner, as a corporate planner is, and if you really want sustainability to come in this, you got to think 10 years from today what is going to happen. And if you don't foresee that, then you lose out. And that's where the key is. If you look at India, we lost out on many markets because we have not foreseen what's happening. We were more inward looking rather than outward looking. If you look at Germany, for example, Germany was manufacturing a lot of things inside. Yeah? But it also knew that for its survival, German population is not enough. If you look at the German population, that's maximum equal to one Mumbai city. Whereas we are, let's say, 120 or 12 billion crores of 12 billion people.
A huge population.
There's a huge population, right? And this huge population has its own internal demands. So we were all very busy catering to the internal demands, and we were very happy about it. Why? Because ultimately, why is a company in business? It's in business only to make profits. And I'm getting my profits without doing much work. By satisfying the Indian market, they are all very happy. It's only when the reforms have taken place and the government of India started lowering the customs duty and you started getting a lot of imported vehicles, imported items coming in, That now people are realizing, oh God, if we have to survive even in the Indian market, we need to go out. And the second important thing is, the Indian habit of bargaining for things. You can price your product whatever you want. Like very recently, I'm planning to buy a television set, and the shopkeeper tells me 15,000 rupees is the cost of the television set, the Samsung 24-inch, whatever it is. Right? I start off with 10,000 rupees. I tell him I'll give you only 10,000 rupees, and then I end up at 12,000 rupees. I buy the product. Is that possible there? In the West, it's not possible. I don't know whether it's possible in Germany, because when I was there in Germany, in Munich,
It again varies from environments to environments, because even in India, for example, in a minimum retail price, when it gets into a fixed price inside the stores, it goes on a fixed price which is down there. But sir, if there is one more question that I would love because a lot of my viewers are from Germany, the German industries, and a lot of other countries as well from Europe. You have been in Germany for a longer period of time. You know the German culture, and you are here as one of the senior most professors in the Indian academia. You are also consulting for many of the industries in India into the boards and divisions. Now, one of the things which is there as a hurdle or like a cultural clash is that the German business do not know how to do business in India. And similarly, the way the Indian cultures of business are emerging, they do not know the European cultures of business which is coming inside. Now, if there is something that you would like to explain down, that for the German industries, when they need to invest into India, what platforms they need to look upon, what are the active schemes and supports which are there. And last thing, if I would love to ask you is, could you also brief a little bit on the electric vehicles growth also in India, sir?
see, if you look at the German culture was more like if you allow me to use the words, it's not a very friendly culture that I see in Germany. Whereas in India, I would tend to ask 10 different people before buying a product. Whereas in Germany, you don't do it. Before buying a fridge, I asked several of my relatives and friends, how is the quality of this TV, that TV, etc. And then I buy the product. So what does it mean? It means, first of all, you got to create an awareness for that product of yours. Number one. Number two is, you may be technologically the best. Well, but remember one thing, price is a very important factor. And Indians by nature, I'm talking of very price, and I'm talking of majority of things. I'm not talking of the Ambanis and the Adanis and all those that segment. I'm talking of the middle class and the lower middle class and the
price sensitive.
They are very, very price sensitive. So you got to bring that, but they are also digitally very smart. That means, if you look at it, trying to put an ad for electrical vehicles in the newspapers is not going to work.
So digital awareness is something.
Digital awareness is very high, which means social media, which means Instagram, which means Facebook, which means LinkedIn. All these things have to come in. And because when a person buys any of these electronic products, you would also go back into the digital media and check what is what. Check the reviews which are coming in. All of these things you do. Only place where it doesn't work is in the case of real estate. But otherwise, in general, awareness creation, number one. Price sensitiveness, number two. And number three, digitally pushing things. Even in my education field, I have to push things digitally. Using the social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, or the Google, for example, I have to do that to really get my admissions coming in. So these are the three things which you must understand, and which has come up in the last 5 to 6, 7 years. Earlier it was not there.
And how about the policies and the localized manufacturing?
The government of India wants that you should start manufacturing in India. And I'll tell you one thing. Here the price of labor is quite low. Though the productivity may be low, the price is also low. Whereas in Germany, the productivity is high and the cost of the labor is also high. So there's a match here which takes place, right? And when you do local manufacturing, you get a lot of incentives from the government. For example, just to give you, for Apple manufacturing in India, which is there, why did Apple come in? The PLI, that means the productivity linked incentive which the government is giving, it's so huge. And today a company like Apple very clearly states that, don't catch me on this figure of 20%, 25% that I'm saying, but 25% or 20% of the turnover comes from Apple, manufactured in India. Why? Because the manufacturing cost is low. And if you go to zones where the government has created, special economic zones, it has created certain industrial zones, you get a lot of tax advantages also. You get tax advantages, you get in terms of GST. You get tax advantages in terms of GST, in terms of customs duty. And all this brings on the cost of the product. And the minute you start saying that I'm going to do this, the government is also happy with you. Why? Because today the unemployment rate is 9.6%. And all the people, the general public and the opposition parties in India are making a very big noise saying that you are doing all of this, but the unemployment rate is very high.
So focus on that as well.
So we need to focus on unemployment. How to reduce this unemployment rate from 9.6% to maybe 3%. I'm just dreaming. I don't know how it's possible, but I'm just dreaming. And how do you do such things? I don't know. And one of the things that the government has said is you start manufacturing. Yeah. And when look at some of the companies like Unilever in India. They don't manufacture all the products. Look at Cadbury. They don't manufacture all their products. They don't have a huge manufacturing unit. What are they doing? They're subcontracting it or outsourcing it to small manufacturers. And it's the small manufacturers who are able to produce jobs.
We in Germany, we call this as the Mittelstand.
Yes, and the Mittelstand.
Mittelstand. And similarly, the SMEs are the ones who are actually empowering.
They are the ones who are creating jobs. Now, for example, if we look at Unilever, the job is almost stagnant. It's just, replacement that is taking place. You retire, I get one more person. And sometimes I don't get a person because I bought in an automation inside whereby I don't require you. But these small manufacturing units, they get a lot of incentive because they get loans at a very low rate of interest. They can build up all of this, and that's the key. So if you want to come up in India and you want to make money, you're going to think of a joint venture. You're going to think of a base where you can start.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Dr. Gopal, thank you so much for joining me. And it's been very nice because this is one of the big areas of discussions that the industries talk about sustaining. And today, the United States, most of the universities that we discuss about is on disruptive technologies. And it's a pleasure to have you. I just hope that we can have more discussions on different topics relating to strategies with you. Thank you so much for kindly joining.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.